Good evening, family. Welcome to another broadcast of Let's Talk About It. As you know, we are a live streaming talk show that streams both on YouTube as well as Facebook. And so I encourage you to take a moment and invite your friends. If you are on Facebook viewing us, I want you to like this page, share it, and send us comments. We can see your comments live as you send them to us. You may even want to start a watch party. If you're viewing us by way of YouTube, then certainly we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and then hit the little bell so that you will be notified each time that we broadcast. We have a special guest with us this evening. We are excited. A strong brother, African American brother. I am proud of his accomplishments, and we will get to him in just a few moments. But right before we get into the show, let me take a moment and pause for the cause and send our prayers and condolences to the persons in Baltimore that were a part of the recent explosion where several persons lost their lives and also more persons were hospitalized due to the natural gas explosion that devastated a whole community right off of Ricerstown Road near Ricerstown Plaza. And so we wanted to take the time to send a message that we are praying for that entire community. We are praying and sending our condolences to those persons who are family members of persons who lost their lives. And then also our prayers and get well wishes to those who are hospitalized. And then even those persons who may not have lost their lives or may not have been hospitalized, but are still traumatized by the event itself. Not only are we sending prayers and condolences to those individuals, but we are also sending our prayers and support to all of the frontline workers, the support workers, the fire department personnel, the police department, social service persons, and all of those who are working to help try to bring about recovery and assistance. And so we say to each of you, I know that we have you in our prayers. We are concerned about your well being and your welfare. And we want you to know that somebody is praying for you, somebody cares about you. And so, thank you for those others who have done what you could, bringing water and food and clothing and necessities to render assistance to some of those persons who have lost everything. I mean, literally have lost everything due to no fault of their own. And sometimes it's good to know that somebody cares. It's good to know that somebody's concerned. It's good to know that somebody's thinking about you, even in the midst of the time when you're going through challenging moments. And so we want you to know that we are continuing to keep you in our prayers. And may God continue to pour out his rich blessings and comfort and support to you. All right. That being said, as you know, we are always pushing and trying to encourage folk about voter registration. As we know, it is one of our platforms here at Let's Talk About It. We encourage you to vote. If you have not registered to vote, you can still do so. The deadline for registering to vote in this November general election is October the 19th. 2020 is the last day that you can register. And certainly you can register just by going to usa.gov. You can register online. You don't even have to go in person. You can register online. And my brothers and sisters, it is important for us to understand that this is going to be one of the most important elections in our country's history. And what I've been sharing with individuals and I've been sharing with folk is listen, let me tell you, when you vote this election, you are not just voting for yourself, but you are voting for your descendants. You are voting for your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, because what will happen as a result of this election is going to set the stage to balance out what has already happened for those who are coming behind us. And as I've said, when the history books are written, our descendants are going to ask the question, just like those descendants of slave owners are asking today, how could my ancestors do those things to those people? That's going to be the question that's going to be asked. That's going to be written in the history books. And so we need to take the time to make sure that we are registered to vote. And we already know that there's a lot of trickery that's going to happen, post office and the mail was being slowed. But listen, I don't have time to talk about that this evening, but we need to wake up and pay attention. There was a saying, and I've talked about it on many occasions, that Whoopi Goldberg played in that movie Sister Act. You remember? She was talking to the young folk. She said, listen, if you want to go somewhere and you want to be somebody, you need to wake up and pay attention to our millennials, to our generation X, to our generation Y, to our older folks. Listen, this is the time. We have to wake up and pay attention. And so I encourage you, get involved, participate, make sure that you've done what is necessary so that you can be eligible to vote. As always, if you need assistance, you can reach out to us. You can email us at yes, let's talk about it, the number one at gmail.com. That's yes, let's talk about it, the number one at gmail.com. And we will do everything that we can to make sure that we get you the information that you need. Well, we are so excited. We are so excited. I cannot tell you just how excited we are We are excited to have with us sharing this evening one of Maryland's top leading state's attorneys, one in the person of Mr. Rich Gibson. We are so happy, Mr. Gibson. Welcome to this. Let's talk about it.
It's my honor to be here. Thank you so much.
It is always such a good thing to be able to have important, not well, I'm not going to say what I was getting ready to say, but important people sharing with us. He is the state's attorney for Howard County. He has made history as being the first African American to be appointed to that position. I believe he's now been serving for probably a year and 8 months now, because it was January
Yes.
2019.
Yes.
You
Yes.
were installed and affirmed the action in Baltimore. Listen, he once served here in Baltimore,
Hmm?
served as in the state's attorney's office, I believe it is, and had some much to do with the court system and challenging folk on what they are to do and what they were supposed to be doing. And so we are grateful to have him sharing with us today. And so, State's Attorney Gibson, welcome, welcome, welcome to Let's Talk About It.
Again, my great honor to be here. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
He was invited to be on our town hall that we had a couple weeks ago, but his previous schedule did not allow him to be available, and he, without even pushing the envelope, he agreed that he would come and share with us at a time that would be convenient and suitable for his schedule. And so we happily took him up on that offer and that opportunity. And so once again, we are just grateful. State's Attorney, won't you just take a moment and just tell us a little bit about yourself? I know we have your resume and all of that, but just talk to the people and just let them know a little bit about you and what you've been doing.
So I am a native of the Bronx, New York. I grew up there and moved to New Jersey when I was in high school. It was a far cry from the Bronx. Um, and where I was in New Jersey was in northern Jersey. It was very different. The Bronx was very diverse, and where I was in Jersey was not very diverse. But it was a good experience, and I learned a lot there. And went to college in New Jersey, and then I came to Maryland for law school. I went to Howard in D.C., and I lived in Silver Spring initially. Um, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. I greatly enjoyed my time at Howard. I learned a ton and was educated um, about not only the law but also about my people and what we're about. And so it was great to have that experience. Um, and then after law school, I clerked for a judge in Prince George's County, Judge Herman C. Dawson. And it was there that I kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to do. Um, and I really gravitated towards criminal law. I liked the fact that the stakes were high. I liked the fact that you were fighting and speaking on behalf of victims. That really spoke to me. And I liked the fact that you controlled every aspect of a case from the beginning to the end. Like you were part of the case from the start to the finish. And I saw just how powerful a voice the prosecutor's office is in that setting. And after clerking, I worked for Glen Ivy in Prince George's County. And then in 2006, I went to Baltimore under Pat Jessamy, started off in their general trial unit, and then went to the 5 unit where I handled non-fatal shootings for a year. And then in '07 was promoted to homicide, where I stayed until 2012, handling homicide cases. I prosecuted probably around 30 or so homicide trials. I tried about 30 or so homicide cases, prosecuted many more than that, but handled about 30 homicides. Then in 2012, I guess Bernstein took over and from Ms. Jessamy, and he created a new unit called Major Investigations. I went to that unit, was selected for that unit. We kind of did organizational crime, so gang cases, human trafficking cases, large scale drug dealing, um, some murders if they were complex. We handled those kind of cases. And then I was promoted to be when Marilyn Mosby won the first time. I was promoted to be a team captain in that unit. Was there uh, under Gerald Collins in that unit. And then in 2018, I ran for office in 2014 for state's attorney in Howard County. I lost, but I was undeterred, and I learned a lot from that loss. And I ran again in 2018 and was victorious, and was elected into office in 2018. And as you said, I was the first African American to hold this position. And it's truly an honor to be in this position. I really value the opportunity to serve at this level and kind of play a defining role in what justice looks like in the community where I live, which is I live in Ellicott City in Howard County. And so it really matters to me, my family. I have 3 children, and my wife and I are overjoyed at the opportunity to kind of live, play, and work in Howard County.
Well, that's a wonderful resume. You've done a lot. You've accomplished a lot. I noticed you didn't mention any of the awards that
Oh
you.
yes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I read your resume.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
tell us
Yes.
about a couple of the major awards that you've won.
So I won. One of the gang prosecutions I was involved in was prosecution of a gang enforcer for the Black Guerrilla family, which is BGF. It was a very complex case. It was roughly 3 years in the making in terms of the investigation. The trial itself took about a month and a half, which for any kind of, if you understand the trial world litigation, a month and a half every day of trial is rare in the criminal world. I tried that with Gerald Collins, and I tried that, and then I tried another gang case with another prosecutor who's now a judge, Dana Middleton, um, and and that case got us some regional recognition, and so uh, I was lucky enough to be named prosecutor of the year for the Mid Atlantic region by a group that oversees gang cases and large scale cases for the entire Mid Atlantic region. So that's one of the awards that I won. Another award that I won was for basically being a budding leader in prosecutorial reform. And so I won an award from a PAC in 2018 for my work in trying to bring reforms to prosecution.
The award that you won for the Mid Atlantic region, that was the Mid Atlantic region encompasses what, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New
Yeah,
Jersey.
basically from New York through Virginia.
Yeah, yeah. So that's not just something that someone looking at would just take lightly.
Mm.
I mean, certainly that's a major achievement and accomplishment for you to have acquired, because there were so many people. There were so many people that probably were in the runnings.
Mm.
When you look at the number of states
Mm.
that you beat them all out.
I mean, I like to be humble, but it is a blessing. We put in a lot of hard work. It was a challenging case, and I believe it had an impact on the community. For individuals like the individually prosecuted in that case, they are a lightning rod. They are an attractive source for young people. They're a recruiting tool for young people to gangs, right? Someone like that is someone who draws people to a gang. And so to remove them from the equation, you're hopefully dissuading people from joining the gang. You're removing a recruiting tool for the gang, and you're also keeping the community safer, because even amongst, and I am, just through the nature of my work, I deal in evil, right? So I see evil every day up close and personal. Um, and that's just the nature of the job that we have. Man's inhumanity demands on full display in our line of work. And not all evildoers are created equal. There are certain, everyone has limits, right? Not everyone's capable of being a truly, for lack of better words, like psychopathic type killer. And this individual happened to be someone that didn't have that kind of off switch, that remorse, that limit. He was someone who uh, would be able to would take life without a second thought and would do so repeatedly and evidence that by his conduct. And so for me, the real pleasure, not pleasure, but the real reward is making sure the community is safer, right? Making sure the community is better off due to that kind of due to our actions. That's the real reward for me.
What do you find? What have you found to be the most challenging and difficult problem for you to overcome as a state's attorney? When we look at the laws, the, as some would say, the loopholes in the laws, what would you say is one of your most challenging um, events to try to deal with?
So the law itself isn't really my the law isn't really the issue. There are loopholes, there are issues like that, but you can navigate that through lawyering. For me, the challenging part is it's particularly um, particularly pronounced in the city when I was in the city. But there was a counterculture that exists where I guess the idea of snitching has taken on a new definition, and so um, snitching was at one point in time thought of as someone's trying to get out of trouble themselves, so they tell on somebody else or something like that. And it's been expanded to incorporate anyone saying that they saw something bad happen to someone else. And so there's a resistance in people coming forward and saying this horrible thing happened before my eyes and it was wrong and there should be accountability for that wrongdoing. And so the one of the greatest challenges isn't actually in the law, but it's in overcoming, I guess, a mentality that embraces criminality to a certain extent, or at least I'd say embraces, but certainly creates an environment that would allow criminality to occur without consequence. And so getting people to come forward has always been a real challenge. And the justice process isn't one that it involves everyone. It involves all stakeholders. It involves people in our community saying, you know what, I saw something. What I saw was wrong. It should not have happened. And you know, you didn't have to make that choice, but you made a choice, and there's consequences for every choice that we make. And getting people to kind of get to that point can be very challenging. It's always saddening when someone's dead, and there's no one there fighting for them but you. As a prosecutor, that's always a sad moment, and that happened quite a bit in the city. There were other times we had whole families there. Don't get me wrong. There's times when people really showed up and they cared, and you could tell the person that life was lost was loved. But there are other times where it was just you in the courtroom, and I fought just as hard either way. But it is something that you take note of.
Sometimes, well, too often, I've had to either eulogize, um, as a clergyman, persons who have lost their lives due to violence. Uh, I've had to console families. I've had to stand with family members in the courtroom with their young, especially their young children or family members who have found themselves on the wrong side of the law. And it's always a challenge to try to get family members to understand it's a whole lot safer, it's a whole lot easier, it's a whole lot more rewarding if we can be more proactive. And I say to parents, listen, you know what your children are doing for the most part. You, I mean, you know they don't have a job. They don't pay taxes. I'll put it like this. They don't pay taxes. They may have a job, but they
Right.
don't pay taxes. They don't get a W-2 form at the end of the year.
Right.
Yet they're able to buy tennis shoes that cost $102 and $300 with no job. They're able to buy clothes that cost hundreds of dollars with no job. Now, and the money that they give you, cash, they don't write you a check, they don't give you a money order, they don't give you a credit card, they give you cash. And as the parent, you receive that and you accept that, and you keep your mouth closed to whatever they're doing, and you say, well, I don't want to know about it. Then when something happens, then you're all up in arms. You want everybody to come rushing to your aid because your child has been caught up in something, and it's sad. And so I try to get parents to understand. Listen, talk to your young folk, talk to them, and if you can't seem to get across to them, then get someone else to talk to them. You know, we all have had challenges. I mean, I have a son who just didn't seem to want to do right, and so what did I do? I had a neighbor that lived across the street from me who was a correctional. Well, actually, two of them lived three doors apart, same side of the street. Both of them were correctional officers. And I actually took him to talk to these guys and say, listen, tell him what his future is going to be if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do.
Right.
I can't seem to get it over to him. I've given him every opportunity. I've tried to help him the best way I can, and I can't seem to get it over to him. Can you talk to my son for me? And they did.
Mhm.
You know, so we cannot be ashamed to reach out to other people to try to get help for our young people that seem to be going down the wrong path. Well, as you know, there's been a lot going on in and around our nation and around our world.
Mhm.
Uh, it's no surprise, even in Europe and Asia and other places, folk are protesting and standing up for the movement now, Black Lives Matter. They've taken it to another level. They are starting to paint it on streets. In fact, in D.C., they painted it in the street. I think in parts of Atlanta and other places, they've painted it in the street. Black Lives Matter. And so
Mhm.
the uprising is there. Folk have said, as a result of watching the film and the video of persons losing their lives with knees on their neck, and folk being shot in the back, and officers say they were in fear of their life. How you in fear of your life when the individual is running away from you? I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, so folk have literally said enough is enough,
Mhm.
and they've started raising hell and protesting, and they went from that to marching in the street, and they went from that to being destructive and burning down buildings and looting stores and businesses. They went from that to tearing down flags, and they went from that to turning over and pulling down statues. And so people have said and have raised enough saying to say enough is enough,
Mhm.
that we're not going to take that kind of behavior sitting down any longer.
Mhm.
So, what I have shared with people is listen, the time is now. The time is now. Uh, and if we say, well, it's not the time, so my question then, if not now, then when? And then there's some say, well, it's not me. I say, well, if not you, then who?
Right.
The bottom line is it's going to take all of us to get involved and to help bring about effective change. But we can't do that just by ourselves. We need individuals like you who are in the driver's seat per se of the law and how
Mhm.
the law is applied. And when we see cases where states attorneys and prosecutors are saying, "Well, we're not going to prosecute this case," uh, talk to us about that. I know
Sure.
it's tough.
No,
Uh,
no, no, no.
you may not have
So
had any of those situations per se, but the state's attorney Gibson, it's tough, man. Can you kind of speak to that for us?
sure, sure. So several things. First off, as I was alluding to in terms of what drew me to prosecution, I realized that when I was looking for how I was going to serve my community, my world, I realized that the prosecutor is the entity that makes a lot of the decisions that impact these kind of outcomes. Um, whether to charge a case, what offer to make, what sentencing recommendation to recommend, whether the person should get a different outcome, whether we don't need to prosecute the case at all. If we're going to sentence him, what sentence do we recommend? The strategy by which we choose to try the case. All of these things are choices that we make that everyone else in the system, defense counsel, the courts, are reacting to. The judges are the ones that decide the actual sentence, but they do so based upon, informed by our decisions, our statements made to them. So we impact all of these things. And so that ability to actually change the course of people's lives was pivotal in my decision to become a prosecutor from the beginning. I've been fortunate enough, lucky enough, blessed enough to be in a position where I am now district attorney and get to make those policy decisions myself. And to be clear, I personally am, and I think most prosecutors, I can't speak most prosecutors, I can speak for prosecutors in Maryland, but most prosecutors in Maryland, myself specifically, we're sickened by what we saw with George Floyd. That is unacceptable by any measure. All right. And I personally, I have a unique perspective because I've been a prosecutor now for 17 years. But I've been a Black man for 44, and I have been the victim of, racial profiling. I have been pulled over at gunpoint before, not in Howard County, but I've experienced that, where I had a gun pointed at me by a police officer. I wasn't doing anything wrong or anything that would demand a gun being pointed at me, but there I was. And I've lived that situation. I've lived that circumstance. So I get it. It's not lost on me.
Have you had any situations like that happen to you since you've been state's attorney and folk didn't know who you were?
No. I was a prosecutor in homicide at the time. My good friend of mine, as a matter of fact, my best man at my wedding, he was a entertainment lawyer at the time, and he was relatively successful, and he was living in Orange County, California. And for those of you not familiar with Orange County, California, there's like no Black people there. It's a very non-diverse space. And he was getting married, and I went out there for his wedding because I was in the wedding party. And I went with a friend of mine who was driving to pick up our tux. And we picked up our tux. We're running late. He was getting married on a yacht. We had to make it to the boat in time to blah, blah. That's beside the point. Bottom line is, my friend who was driving after we picked up our tuxes chose to drive the wrong way up a one-way street. I told him not to do it. I was in the passenger seat. I said, don't do it. But he chose to do it anyway. He drove the wrong way up a one-way street. And as we got to the light, an officer happened to be sitting there. And I told my friend, I said, pull over right now. Pull over right now because it's going to be ugly if you don't. And my friend listened to me at this juncture. He pulled over, and the cop turned on his lights and siren, and he pulled in behind us, and he got out the car, and his gun was out, pointed at us. He said, show me your hands. Or said to us, show us your hands. And I had my badge, which is a black object with like a shield inside of it, in my hand. And I realized, this is happening in like split seconds, but I realized that this officer is scared. This officer is pointing a gun at us it's a regular traffic stop. The gun shouldn't be out. There's no basis for that. And I realized that if I put my hand out the window with a black object in it, something bad might happen. So I dropped my badge to the floor of the car and put my hands out the window. Officer took my friend, sat him on the curb, took me out, sat me on the curb, and the officer said, why didn't you run? Like literally that was the words out of this officer's mouth. Why didn't you run? And my response was, my friend did wrong. And I told him to pull over. I was wearing a t-shirt and some jeans at the time. The tux was in the back of the car. We went there to pick up the tuxes. And we weren't in suits or anything, official. Officer then says, do you have any ID on you? I said, officer, my ID is in the badge on the floorboard, passenger side floorboard of the car where I was sitting. Officer recovers the badge and looks at it and then says, "How do I know this is you?" Didn't you know? I'm relatively young looking, and I'm in a t-shirt and jeans, and we're in California, and the badge and license is from Maryland, obviously. I said, "You can call the office, but there's a 3-hour difference, so I don't know if anyone will be there, but you can call the office and check, and you'll be able to verify that. Assuming someone answers, you're able to verify that I am Rich Gibson, homicide prosecutor from Baltimore City." Officer calls. We had a habit back in the day of, it was a Friday. We had a habit on Fridays of sitting around and usually drinking a little bit and talking. And one of my friends happened to be there. His name was Charles Blomquist. And the officer calls, puts the phone on speakerphone, dials the number. Charles answers the phone, and the officer identifies himself as Officer so-and-so from Orange County. Do you have a Rich Gibson who works in your office? And if you do, can you describe what he looks like? And Charles says, "Yes, I know Rich Gibson. He does work here. He's a 60-year-old white guy, balding, overweight." And I was like, I was just stuck in my chest. Like I stopped breathing for a second, and everything's silent it was probably a split second, but it felt like longer. And the officer starts to laugh. I'm sorry. Charles starts to laugh. The officer starts to laugh. Charles describes me accurately. Officer lets us go. I was happy to be out of there. We made the boat, and the rest is history. But the point is that situation could have gone wrong at so many different ways.
Yeah.
But for fortune and a little quick thinking, it could have been really an ugly situation. I could have been a statistic. Having said that, I've been a prosecutor for 17 years. And in that time, I've interacted very closely with officers. And I've found that most of them are not racist. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are just trying to do their jobs and want to serve the community in that way by being an officer. And so I have a deep respect for police. I have a deep respect for the work that they do. But I also understand there are bad apples out there. I also understand that fear makes people make bad decisions. And those bad decisions can be catastrophic. Luckily for me, I'm in a position now to kind of weigh in on these things. I was recently appointed to be the chair for Maryland, for all the prosecutors in Maryland, for the police and prosecutorial reforms. And we are prosecutors who say, "Hey, look, we recognize we are all elected prosecutors. There's 24 of us in the state of Maryland, and we all recognize that this is an issue, that systemic racism is real, that it has real impacts in every aspect of society, education, medical health outcomes, banking, finance, land use and zoning, and certainly law enforcement and criminal justice. And we want to make sure that we do things that make our society safer while still maintaining order." And so we proposed 12 suggestions, things like, body-worn camera being mandated throughout Maryland, which requires funding, of course. Implicit bias training for officers and prosecutors. Having prosecutors requiring prosecutorial review for no-knock warrants, so we don't have a Breonna Taylor case in Maryland, or Breonna Taylor-like case in Maryland, or we reduce the likelihood of having a Breonna Taylor-like case in Maryland. Background checks, enhanced background checks for officers, embracing diversity initiatives, both in police and prosecutors' offices. There's a legal term called giglio, which I won't get into. It's very, very technical, but basically you're creating a standardized giglio procedure for Maryland. These are just some of the 12 things that we've articulated through the board that I'm chairing for all the prosecutors in Maryland that we're going to bring to Annapolis next month. We go back before the Judiciary Committee next month in the hopes of saying, "Hey, look, we recognize there are problems. We want to fashion solutions to those problems. We want to be part of the solution to those problems. And we're not uncaring, and we're not people who have our heads in the sand. who are saying this doesn't exist. Implicit bias is real. Racism is real. It's having real impacts. People are losing their lives, and we want to do something about it.
How many of your other constituents actually feel the same way that you do? Within
So again, I'm the chair. I'm the chair of that particular committee for, again, police and prosecutorial reforms for the state of Maryland amongst prosecutors. Um, these reforms that we suggested, these 12 suggestions, these 12 points, were largely unanimous. So we got all 24 to agree on the vast majority of them. There were some that had some pushback on certain issues. I'm trying to find one of them.
I don't know if you are aware, but Baltimore County, just a week or so ago, their council people did not. They had an opportunity to vote on a bill that was introduced by Councilman Julian Jones, and they chose not to.
What was the bill? I'm not familiar with that one.
Bill was it was a bill for police reform that was introduced by Councilman Julius Jones. It was bill number 73-20 that he had introduced. But the council for Baltimore County, they, from my understanding, they tabled it. But the bottom line is they didn't vote for it.
I mean, I think that, to your point about if not now, when, I think that we are at a point where, if you think about the civil rights movement, you think about like the nature of it. This Black Lives Matter movement right now, you had people in China protesting. You had people like all around the world were saying what's happening in America is wrong. That is rare. I mean, you're talking about a very rare thing where the world can unite on an issue. And an issue like, look, China is not exactly a diverse space. So it's an issue that doesn't even directly impact them. And they're saying, it doesn't impact me, but I see it. I recognize it for what it is, and it's wrong. And they're willing to come together in large numbers and speak out during COVID. Okay, so you're coming together at a time when it's dangerous to come together.
Exactly.
Right. And so I think that now is a moment where we can actually make reforms. I think you have to be careful about the reforms you make. I do think you need to tailor your solutions wisely so that you don't do reforms for reform's sake. You do things that are going to create, I believe in creating a safer environment. My mission is to create as safe as possible a Howard County as I can. And I believe every city attorney hopefully shares that same goal of creating as safe a space that they oversee as possible. Some of the reforms, like the defund the police movement, means different things to different people. To those that think to those that believe that defund the police means actually defunding the police to zero, like just doing away with police, evil exists. And like I said, I spend my every waking moment for the last 17 years bathing in it. Like I see stuff that nobody wants to see, and the stuff on TV is pale in comparison to reality, right? Evil exists.
Yes.
All right. And police and prosecutors and law enforcement in general is performing a key function of keeping that evil in check. All right. There are child predators out there. Right? We have cases regularly, sadly, where some individual is trying to lure some child to meet them at a park to do God knows what nasty things. Okay. And we have police that are intercepting those individuals and stopping them from committing the act that they want to commit. All right. That's just one example, but it's every day we see it. So evil exists. Defunding the police in total would lead to chaos. All right.
So what do you believe defunding the police should actually mean, or how would you define it per se?
So I think at its most benign, it means a reprioritization of our tax dollars, right? At its most egregious, it means eliminate the police, which again I think is silly. I mean, it lacks without being disrespectful to anyone who believes that, if you did away with the police, society would crumble fast, right? It would be disastrous. Again, I can say that from an informed place. I see the evil that many don't see. The other end of it, the most benign version of it, is reprioritizing our tax dollars to reallocate those resources to social services so that the police can be reserved for more egregious circumstances, and the more benign circumstances can be handled by social workers or people who are skilled at negotiating those particular circumstances. There's some logic to that. It depends on the space that you're in. There are places where the vast majority of your tax dollars are expended on law enforcement, and you might be able to reprioritize and get more bang for your buck. So it depends on the space you're in. In Howard County, where I'm at, the police are actually already defunded. Like Howard County, we just got our tax bill recently. For every dollar we spend, 62 cents is spent on education. So 62 cents of every dollar goes to the school. Every tax dollar that's brought in, 62 cents of it goes to the schools. Law enforcement, I believe, hold on, I'll tell you what it is right now. Give me 1 second and I'll tell you what it is. Gallery. Law enforcement gets 12, public safety, which encompasses my office, the sheriff's office, the police, fire, and emergency services, gets 12 cents of every dollar. So 62 cents goes to schools. 12 cents is divided amongst all those agencies.
12?
12 cents.
12?
12 cents.
How recent is that?
This is my most recent tax bill. This just happened. Let's see what's the date on this. Hold on. This is probably July. My most recent tax bill.
So you're saying in Howard County, 12 cents from every dollar goes towards public safety, which encompasses about what? Seven organizations?
Several different agencies, yes. You're looking at several different agencies, right? You're talking about police, fire, my office, the sheriffs, etc., emergency services. 12 cents.
12.
Right, but 62 cents goes to education. One organization, Howard County Public Schools.
That's amazing. Well, look, right. we've got about 10 minutes. I want you to speak to the issue, and I know it wasn't in your county, but when we hear state's attorneys say, well, we arrested the officer quick, but it normally takes 8 or 9 months before we can arrest an officer. And I don't think I need to call the conversation when that came out of just a few weeks ago. But how can people feel confident in the state's attorney's offices around the city, around the state, around the country, when it seems as if blatant wrongdoing has taken place? And even now, when it's being shown, captured on video or cameras, cell phones, when we see things happening and they say, I mean, it's just like the case in Georgia where they did not eat, they sat on it for months. They sat on it for how can people feel comfortable with the state's attorney's offices when we have that kind of what we would consider wrongdoing taking place?
So several things. I will say this. When it comes to investigations, it depends on the intent of the agency, right? So if the agency is trying to hide, obscure, that has a different flavor. But I will say that investigations do take time. And in light of COVID, a lot of our tools were frozen for a period of time. So for instance, if you were planning on using the grand jury, there was no you didn't have a grand jury impaneled. So you really couldn't proceed with certain investigations just due to the fact that everything was shut down. Not making excuses for anyone, but investigations do take time and you want to get it right. if you're going to bring charges against, especially bringing charges against a police officer, but anyone for that matter, not just a police officer, whenever you bring charges against any human being, you are saying as a state agency, I believe you committed this crime, and I'm now going to take your liberty and put that at risk. And so you want to make sure that you get that right. You want to make sure that you dot every I and cross every T. And so that can sometimes lead to delay that is frustrating to people. I think that if the delay, you really can't evaluate delay until you look at it in the delay makes sense or doesn't in hindsight. So after an action is concluded, what were you doing with the time that you had? Were you sitting on your thumbs? Because if that's the case, that's terrible, and you should be held accountable, right? If you were proceeding with an investigation to the degree that you could, and there were some things that impeded that progress, that's a different animal. But I do believe whether it's a police-involved shooting or a DUI case, you want to make sure that they're very different, by the way. But you want to make sure that you want to make sure you get it right. Getting it right is more important than getting it fast.
Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gibson. Does it take 8 or 9 months to bring charges when you have video that clearly shows wrongdoing? Does it really take 8 or 9 months?
So for me, I would say no. If there was video clearly showing wrongdoing, well, let me rewind that. It can depend, and here's why I say that. I've had cases. It's hard because you're speaking. What we're talking about is nuanced, so it's hard to speak in generalities about something that's very specific. I've had cases where video has been misinterpreted. Video doesn't lie, but you can misinterpret what you see, and more information can give new meaning to the way you interpret a piece of evidence, including video. And so you might see video and think, oh, this is clearly this. But then you find out other facts that change the way you view that video. And I take our role very, very seriously, right? Whenever we levy charges against somebody, we're not playing around. It's a very serious thing. And so you want to make sure that you are correct. You want to move with deliberate speed. You want to have a sense of urgency about you, right? But being fast is not the priority. The priority is being correct. I would rather someone move slower and reach the right conclusion than move fast, make everyone feel happy in the moment, and then turn around later have to drop the case, and it's just a big ball of mess because you missed this fact, that fact, that fact, and that fact because you were in a rush to charge something. That being said, if it's crystal clear and it's obvious to everyone, then there's no reason for a delay. Oftentimes, I have found, however, that what seems clear may not, in fact, be that clear. I have seen that many times.
Is that because there are other extenuating circumstances, or there are factors that have to be factored in that are not viewed in the footage?
Right. So there are it's all of the above. It's other facts that you may not be aware of at the time you view the video that could change your perception of the video. I'll give you a case in point. Someone, if you think that it's two random people interacting with, even with George Floyd, I think it came to light, or no, not George Floyd. The young man who was killed for walking into the house. It was a citizen's arrest gone bad in Georgia. I can't remember the young man's name, unfortunately. I'm blanking on it right now. The young man who walked into a home. It was an unfinished home. Two guys decided that they didn't like him in the neighborhood. They thought he was stealing things, so they had no evidence of it.
Yes, that was a guy in Georgia. Right.
I can't remember his name.
He was jogging through the community, and two guys.
Right. So what we found out afterwards is that there's some prior connection between the people. At first, it's just random people. Time and investigation keeps going. You find out there's some actual connection between these people have interacted before, right? With George Floyd, I think he had worked in the same bar as the officer that was kneeling on his neck. Like, that changes things, right? Maybe this is personal. Maybe it's just an arrest. Maybe they had some prior beef, and now it's his chance to get even, and he's kneeling on his neck because this is my big day to get even with this guy. I want to show him something. Versus just a stop that went bad. Ahmaud Arbery, that's the gentleman's name in Georgia, Mr. Arbery, right? But the bottom line is, facts can give context that can change the way the video is viewed and what the video actually means.
Well, that was one of the cases where the state's attorneys, they sat on it for months, and it wasn't until it got leaked that something started happening. Then
that's
come to
egregious.
find out that the state's attorney was friends with one of the guys who shot him, and it just
Right.
the more that this unfolded, it just became a serious matter of distrust amongst the community and law enforcement that
Absolutely.
just breeded trouble.
Reverend Mason, I agree with you completely. That is a problem. If you're sitting on a case, just to sit on a case, to stall or delay or just to waste time, that's wrong. And there should be accountability for that in the election booth.
Well, all I know is right now we have a problem in this state. We have a problem in this country. We have a problem around the world. And for the most part, people are saying enough is enough.
Yep.
And we're not going to take it anymore. And individuals like yourself that we as the community have to put our trust in to hopefully execute the law based on the facts and the true evidence, not based on popularity or being persuaded, or based on whether or not the person is a person in a blue uniform, or any other extenuating circumstances. The fact of the matter is, we in the community, especially those who we have finally got the opportunity to get people that look like us in positions of authority, to not be afraid to do what's right.
Of course.
I mean, my father used to say, right is right and wrong is wrong. It's not a matter of the color. It's a matter of right and wrong. And I know very few situations are as cut and dry as we think that they are. And I understand that. But come on now, let's be real about some things. There's a whole lot of shady business going on. There are a whole lot of deals being cut, a whole lot of things being waved off because folk don't think that anybody knows, only to find out later on. I mean, think about it. That Aubrey situation, if the video footage had never been leaked, it's a good possibility nothing still would have happened as a result of that young man getting killed.
Without question, what has changed the nature of the dialogue so the Black community has complained about unfair and unjust treatment that leads to horrible outcomes for the longest time. What has changed is this, right? The ability for every citizen to capture a moment and have that moment be preserved to show the world this is what's actually happening. So without question, cell phones, the ready accessibility of them, the videos, they've lended credence to what was dismissed for so long. For so long, other communities have said, no, that's not true. Well, now you see it. What do you think? And the answer is everyone, I think, is now pretty clear. I mean, anyone who's saying that this isn't a problem has got their head in the sand, right? This is a problem, and we're trying to deal with it, right? At least the good prosecutors, police, the good people that actually care about justice are trying to right the situation.
Well, our time is up. State's Attorney Gibson, we didn't rake you over the coals too much.
No. My pleasure. My pleasure.
I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us, be a part of what we are doing here at Let's Talk About It. And even with the fact that We are dealing with some strange situations. We're dealing with some things that are causing problems in our community, but we're standing together. We are not deterred. We want to thank you again for the good work that you've been doing. We say keep up the good work, and you know how to reach us. Certainly keep us informed of the upcoming actions that your committee is taking as it relates to going to Annapolis, and whatever we can do to support you all. You know how to reach me.
Thank
You
you.
have a platform, you have a forum here at Let's Talk About It. So if you ever need to use it, it's at your disposal. Once again, thank your staff and all of those who helped to make it possible. Uh, give your family our regards for allowing you to spend this time with us and not with them.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
continue to keep on doing what you've been doing. And any final words?
No, Reverend Mason, just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and talk and listen. Thank you, thank you. I truly appreciate it. And if you ever need anything from me, feel free to reach out. And I apologize I couldn't make it before. I
No
really
problem. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have seen it. It's been live, it's been true, it's been fun. We are grateful that we've had the opportunity to share another broadcast. As you know, we're right here every Thursday, 8 p.m. We're talking about it, keeping it real, doing what we need to do. Thank you.